It's my honor to kick things off this morning by introducing a woman we affectionately call the Godmother of the Adam Smith Society. This is not an exaggeration. From the day 7 years ago now that she partnered with the Manhattan Institute, she had an idea which became the genesis for the Adam Smith Society. And since then, she has provided leadership in terms of actual capital, but also in terms of intellectual capital. She believes deeply in our mission. She lives it. She evangelizes it. She's an intellectual business leader who is unafraid to publicly defend business and our capitalist system. I'm referring, of course, to the incomparable Marilyn G. Fedak. Marilyn had a storied career on Wall Street. After joining Sanford C. Bernstein in 1984 as a senior portfolio manager, she served as AllianceBernstein's chief investment officer. She became the head of Bernstein Global Equities. She was named the chair of investment services in 2009. She was president of the Sanford C. Bernstein Mutual Funds. She was a partner at AllianceBernstein. She served on Sanford C. Bernstein's board of directors. She created and led AllianceBernstein's talent development team. She is a chartered financial analyst. She has a BA from Smith and an MBA from HBS, so she's a huge underachiever. It's safe to say that Marilyn knows a little bit about investing. She also knows about the importance of investing in talent. She had the foresight to recognize your talent, the talent of all of you in the room today, and the value of the network that we could build as capitalists for capitalism. In just 7 years, we've grown this network from 4 members to a network of over 8,500 people. We're convening a national meeting this weekend where we have 35 business schools in attendance and members from not only all across the country, but all over the world. Given all of her experience and her talent, Marilyn knows I like to point out a little fun fact about her every time I introduce her, and what I think is perhaps her most relevant credential in her work with the Adam Smith Society, and that is that she was a cheerleading captain when she was in high school. And she continues today to serve as basically our cheerleader-in-chief. As many of you know, she visits as many chapters as she possibly can. While she's there, she really tries to get to know the members, not only to teach you and to share with you her experience about how to lead for a free market, but also to make sure that we're giving you all the tools that you need to be effective advocates for capitalism and for the free markets as well. Marilyn knows that if she takes the time to develop your talent, it will benefit us all in the end. It is that spirit, along with her vision and, of course, her devotion to our mission and our members, that has helped drive the success of this society since its inception. Simply put, without Marilyn, the Adam Smith Society would not exist. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Adam Smith Society's godmother and cheerleader-in-chief, the Vice Chair Emeritus of AllianceBernstein and founder of the Marilyn G. Fedak Capitalism Project, Marilyn Fedak.
Thank you, Alison, and thank you all for joining us today. I love to be introduced by Alison, right? I mean, who wouldn't? You know, she makes me feel like the queen of the world. By the way, that's a job to which I aspire. So far, nobody's nominated me. But even more importantly, she reminds me of all the wonderful things that I got to do in my 40 years of Wall Street. And I loved it. I loved it. I loved every minute of it. But I have to tell you, there is nothing that I am prouder of than my part in co-founding the Adam Smith Society. And there is nothing that I have ever done that I think will have as much long-term impact. The proof of that is all of you here today. I'm not really a very emotional person, for those of you who know me, but I have to say, when I look out here and I see all of you, and I remember where we started 7 years ago, all I can think is, wow, wow. And I'm sure that Larry, Moan, and Vanessa, and Alison would all agree with me. When we started this 7 years ago, we wouldn't have thought in a million years we could have been as successful as we have been in such a short-term period of time. Now, I'd like to take credit for this. We'd all like to take credit for it, but we can't. Look, the staff at Adam Smith and I could sit around all day here in New York and come up with great ideas, but they wouldn't amount to anything without your enthusiasm for our mission. And I'd particularly like to thank the chapter leaders, past, present, and future, and I see representatives of each of those classes in the room today who have put so much of themselves into this. It's a lot of hard work, and we really appreciate it. The credit for our rapid growth is due to you. So thank you all so much. Now, I think that many of you know how the Adam Smith Society came about, but for those of you who don't, let me tell you a little bit about it. It all started, I think, for the Manhattan Institute and I, really in 2009. Of course, it was the absolute nadir of the financial crisis. It was an extremely scary time. And I was glued to the business news day and night, and what I could see is that the critics of our economic system were using the crisis as an opportunity to attack capitalism. And I can remember looking up at the business news at the screen and saying, what is the matter with these people? Are they insane? Oh my God, don't they get it? It is the free markets that have made this country so great. It is what has given the opportunity to so many people to improve their lives. It's given the chance for great innovation for people like Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, John Mackey, and I hope for many of you in your careers. The rhetoric surrounding this was absolutely awful. In some cases, you should go back and look at some YouTube clips of this. It was actually demagogic. So we decided right there and then that we had to do something to support our free market system. The future of our country then and now depends upon it. So why do we believe that capitalism is so important? As we see it, it falls into three major categories. The first of these, the pragmatic benefits of capitalism. You know, economic growth, job creation, social mobility, innovation. We all know those. Everybody talks about them. But they get taken for granted. They shouldn't be. They are fundamental to our way of life. Secondly, is the morality of capitalism. This, of course, was something that Adam Smith first recognized and popularized. It's why we named the society after him. Since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, capitalism has allowed hundreds of millions of people to pull themselves out of poverty and to better their lives. There is no other economic system in history that has done anything like this. And finally, the strong connection between our economic system and our personal freedoms. Think of it this way. If you can't retain what you own or earn, if you can't hire and fire at will, enter freely into contracts, and speak your mind without fear of retaliation, then you're not really free, are you? Now, I think that when I kind of go through this list, it seems a little bit abstract, but these freedoms are very real. And in fact, they are in jeopardy today. Take, for example, the ability to speak your mind without fear of retaliation. This has taken over not only undergraduate schools and in some cases graduate schools, but in fact, our business community. I'm sure you all know the story of James Damore, the Google engineer who was fired because he posted his thoughts about gender diversity on the company website. But I think that fewer of you probably know about Franklin Codell. Franklin Codell was one of the top 25 executives at Wells Fargo who was fired abruptly last November. What was his offense? He spoke disparagingly about a regulator to a former employee in a private conversation. If that isn't Big Brother is watching, I don't know what is. I find that very scary. I think these examples make the point. If you don't have economic autonomy, you do not have personal freedom. It really is as fundamental as that. Now, to make sure that capitalism would continue to survive and thrive, the Manhattan Institute and I wanted to create an organization that would have impact for many years to come. And so we decided to launch the Adam Smith Society on business school campuses. The idea was to expose MBAs to these ideas and to build a network of like-minded future business leaders to articulate their importance now and in the future. To promote such discussion, we've enlisted what we think is an A-class group of free market thinkers and entrepreneurs to visit our chapters. Just to drop a few names, I don't have time to drop a lot, but I will drop a few. Our speakers have included Jamie Dimon, David Goldhill, Bobby Tudor, SEC Commissioner Michael Pivovar, Paul Singer, and Larry Kudlow, among many other luminaries. We're also actively encouraging chapters to sponsor debates. Look, if all we do is preach to the choir, as much as I love the choir, we're not going to accomplish our goals. We want to bring all students into campus, into discussion and debate so that they can hear the facts and different viewpoints and make up their own minds. We've held 22 debates over the past year on such topics as net neutrality, the carbon tax, and a universal basic income. And of course, we're practicing what we preach today, as you'll hear what I expect to be a spirited debate on the future of Bitcoin after lunch. Finally, we're providing our members with educational opportunities outside of the classroom. Our newest initiative is the Smith Sock Treks. We introduced these in 2016, and each of them give an opportunity for a small number of members to meet with experts on various philosophical and policy issues. Over the last 2 years, we've hosted treks on the future of free trade, Adam Smith on ethics and economics, work and welfare in the 21st century, entrepreneurship, prosperity and culture, and healthcare 2.0. I attended what I actually think was the first trek on capitalism versus socialism, and I have to tell you, it was one of the best intellectual experiences of my life, It was intellectually intoxicating. And for any of you who haven't been to one, I would really, really encourage you to try and attend at least one. Now, a lot has happened since we founded the Society 7 years ago, but the need to support capitalism is as great as ever. Anti-capitalist forces in our society continue to be pervasive, and that is particularly true among young people. A survey done by the Harvard Institute of Politics in 2016 found that among 18 to 29-year-olds, only 42% support capitalism. And 33%, a third, proudly proclaim themselves socialists. 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 I mean, I've said this before, I've given these, but every time I'm like, oh my God. 18 to 29-year-olds, so I'm sure they all at least finished high school. Didn't they learn that socialism has failed abysmally in every single country that it's been tried? I don't know. It gets worse, even for the 34 to 49-year-old demographic, only 50% supported capitalism. Now, there are many reasons why this anti-capitalist bias has become so prevalent, but I think that one of them is because we don't have truly free markets in many sectors of our economy. Instead, we have a crony capitalism, and that links the interests of big business and big unions to big government, and it stands in the way of economic growth and prosperity. These unholy alliances have spawned a morass of regulation and legislation that stand in the way of all of our standards of living. Let me give you a few examples of how this has played out in various industries. First, healthcare. As the FDA became more bureaucratic and risk-averse over the years, the time and money that pharmaceutical companies need to invest in new drugs has skyrocketed. Today, it takes approximately 11 years on average for a drug to go from the lab to market, and the cost is $1.5 to $2 billion per drug. As a result, important new drugs are not available to help those who need them, and indeed may never come to market. And of course, drug prices are higher because competition is being stifled. Second, the financial industry. When I graduated from business school in the early 1970s, there were 24,000 independent banking institutions in this country. Today, there are only 7,000. Why? Legislation and regulations such as the Community Reinvestment Act and Dodd-Frank are just too costly and onerous for small businesses to be able to cope with them. Some industry insiders predict that the number of independent banks could fall to under 1,000 in the not-too-distant future. That doesn't augur well for the ability of small businesses to get financing. That's not good for future entrepreneurs like you or the overall economy. And indeed, over the last 40 years, you may find this very counterintuitive, but it's true, it's a fact. The rate of new business formation in this country has just about halved. That's no coincidence. And for those who think that technology is insulated from these problems, look at the attacks on Airbnb over the past year. Just this January, San Francisco implemented new regulations targeting Airbnb. As a result, their rental listings plummeted from over 11,000 to just 6,000. In New York, a law signed 18 months ago imposes a fine of up to $7,500 on people who advertise short-term rentals that don't conform to New York State guidelines. To put that in perspective, that is higher than the fines imposed on drunk drivers in New York. Now, some people have claimed that the powerful hotel lobby is behind all of this, just like the licensed taxi industry has fought Uber and Lyft. And we now have some evidence that that, in fact, is true. In July, Bloomberg reported on a group called Share Better. It's a partnership between the hotel industry and its unions, which openly states that its goal is to shrink Airbnb's footprint in New York City. Okay, so I'm sure many of you are thinking, well, what's wrong with that? I mean, these guys have a right to defend themselves, right, in their business? Well, here's what's wrong with this. Share Better hires private investigators to conduct sting operations on Airbnb hosts. Armed with fake social media profiles and hidden cameras, the investigators worm their way into Airbnb units, looking for anything they can use to claim that this unit is being used as an illegal hotel. And it gets worse. They then turn their findings over to New York City regulators. I was going to say, can you spell crony capitalism, but I actually almost came out with, can you smell crony capitalism? It's kind of the same idea here. How creepy is this? Now, if our country is to prosper, if future generations are to thrive, we've got to turn this around, right? How can that be done? We're counting on you, the future business leaders in this room and around the country. It is you who will lead the charge for positive change. Look, I know that there's a widely accepted narrative that the only way to improve the life of our citizens and advance civilization itself is by working through nonprofits and the government. And so it's never surprising to me when I meet young people who say they want to help others, then they go on to say, well, I'm going to become a doctor or I'm going to become a legal aid lawyer. I have even met business school students who tell me they don't want to work for a profit-making organization. They only want to work for nonprofits or the government. Look, there's nothing wrong with those paths. I mean, they're great if you want to do it. But they pale in comparison with the positive impact of a profit-oriented business community on the world. To quote from one of my favorite books, Howard's End by E.M. Foster, "One sound man of business does more good for the world than a dozen of your social reformers." And we at Adam Smith truly believe that. Capitalism is amazing, right? It's a wondrous thing. It's the only economic system which promotes human dignity by allowing people to better themselves through their own efforts. But it doesn't exist by itself, right? Without business people to deliver capitalism's benefits, it's just an idea, it's just an ideal. You are critical to its success. And there's so much more that business provides our society. By offering quality products and services at reasonable prices, business has dramatically improved our standard of living. Think about Henry Ford and the Model T, Walmart and everyday low pricing, Bill Gates and the personal computer, smartphones, Grubhub, Amazon Prime, cars that park themselves. All of these and others have dramatically improved our lives. Business leaders can also improve the lives of their employees, not only by offering them jobs and wages, although of course that's the fundamental basis of this, but by giving them opportunities for personal growth, by inspiring them to achieve things that they never thought possible. Employees can find purpose in their lives by being part of a community driving towards a common mission. I was lucky enough to experience all of those benefits in my career, and I hope that you will as well. They are deeply satisfying. The most successful business people I know are good people. They're striving to have a positive impact on the world. And the leverage of a business leader is enormous. You can improve the life of thousands, tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands or millions of people during your career. Our job at Adam Smith, our only job, is to support you in this effort, both now and throughout your careers. The mission you're embarking upon, look, we know it's not going to be easy. But I have met so many of you over these 7 years, and I know with your talent, your passion, your ambition, your drive, you're not going to let this get in your way, not only for your future, but for the future of your children, your grandchildren, and our country. And in doing so, I am confident that you are going to change the positioning. You're going to change the perception of a business career from something that people think of as a solely materialistic pursuit to what it really is, a noble endeavor. For this and so much more, I and everyone at Adam Smith, thank you guys. Thank you so much for being part of this.